Hi everyone, this is Dr. Anusha. So in today's lecture, we are going to read about Introduction to Parasitology. We will look at important terminologies, some life cycles, classification. I know it's a boring topic, that is why we tend to skip it. But once and for all, we will read it today and we will get it done with. So we will use a lot of our imagination, some mnemonics, and once we will have a wholesome understanding of the kingdom of parasites and in which classification which organism behaves. How it is going to help us is, if we understand how the organisms of a particular class behave, it is easy to remember the life cycle and so many things about each individual parasite. Okay, so let's go straight into the lecture. For introduction, we know that a parasite is somebody who derives nutrition from the host and in turn it harms the host. Okay, it harms the host. Now it is never going to benefit the host, even if not harm. There are two types. It can be classified into various types. A parasite can be an obligate parasite, a parasite can be a facultative parasite. An obligate parasite is one which cannot live outside the host, so it will always live inside the host cells. Example is the malaria causing parasite Plasmodium. Okay, Plasmodium cannot survive in the environment. It has to live inside some host, either mosquito or human. It has to live inside the cells. Now you have facultative parasites, which are those which can also live and thrive very well in the environment and also can live inside the cells of a host. Examples are your free living amoebae like Acanthamoeba and Nigleria, which are found very well in the soil, in the water, and also they cause cerebral infections in humans. Okay, now the other two classifications is endoparasite and an ectoparasite. Okay, endoparasite, the word itself is quite explanatory. Endo means inside, ecto means outside. A parasite which stays in inside, that is an endoparasite. So the parasite which will live inside the cells. When the parasite causes disease in human, it is called as an infection. Okay, commonly used term for bacteria, viruses, any pathogen which it infects the humans because it enters inside the cells. Okay, now an ectoparasite is going to stay ecto, it is going to stay outside, so it is going to cause infestation. Like in movies, when we say the aliens have invaded the earth, they have infestated the cities. Okay, so they have come and lived on the body surface, so they just inhabit the body surface and they do not enter inside the cells. So examples are your lice, mites, ticks. Okay, these all, they simply inhabit the body surface, they do not enter our cells, so they are ectoparasites which cause infestation. What is an important disease? Scabies. Scabies is a very important disease in children. It is caused by the ectoparasite Sarcoptes scabii. Sarcoptes scabii. So the third classification is accidental parasite and aberrant parasite. An accidental means that the parasite infects an unusual host. Now our host of our importance is human only because we are reading medical microbiology. So it infects an unusual host which is human. Now human is not the usual host for this parasite. Example is Echinococcus granulosus. This Echinococcus granulosus is also called as the dog tapeworm. So the usual host for this tapeworm is the dog, but sometimes accidentally it infects the humans and causes the hydatid disease. Okay, causes hydatid disease. So accidental. That means usually in nature, for the life cycle of the parasite, a dog is needed. Okay, so the parasite is happily infecting the dog, causing disease in dog and surviving. It need not infect man, but sometimes accidentally due to contact with dogs, man can get infected. In that case, it's an accidental parasite. Okay, and an aberrant parasite is also called as a wandering parasite. In Hindi, like we say, bhatakta hua. Okay, a wandering, like larva migrants. Larva which keeps migrating inside the human body. Okay, example is Toxocara in humans. So inside the human body, Toxocara causes larva migrants, because what happens is the development is arrested. Development is arrested in this host of the parasite, and the parasite stays in an encysted or encapsulated form inside the body. Okay, so parasites are derives nutrition, harms host, obligate, cannot live outside cell, facultative, can live in both ways, endoparasite, causes infection, ectoparasite, infestation, accidental in an unusual host, aberrant or wandering, also called as larva migrants. Okay, now let's jump straight into the classification before we learn about the host and the life cycles. Now, broadly, the parasites we can classify into two. Okay. One is the protozoa. Okay. And other is helminths. Helminths. Please remember it now only. Protozoa are unicellular parasites. Helminths are multicellular parasites. Okay. Multicellular parasites. Now, let's first look at the protozoa or the unicellular parasites. These are further divided depending on the organ of locomotion that they use. Okay. Organ of locomotion. It can be pseudopodia. So, it will be amoebae. Amoebae. Okay. Now, these amoebae can be pathogenic. They can be non-pathogenic. Like in your exams, you're asked to find out the cysts of some non-pathogenic parasites. Pathogenic can be entamoeba histolytica. It can be your free-living amoebae like Naegleria and Acanthamoeba, right? If the locomotion is because of flagella, they are called flagellates. Flagellates can be three. They can be intestinal flagellates, they can be genital flagellates, and they can be hemoflagellates. Right? I just want you to remember one example of each. So, pathogenic amoeba, you remember entamoeba histolytica and free-living amoeba. Intestinal flagellate, remember Giardia. Genital flagellate, remember T. vaginalis. Hemoflagellate, remember Leishmania and Trypanosoma. If you have some awareness about parasitology, then this is a recap for you. If you don't worry. You will learn eventually. Now, if the locomotion is because of cilia, then these are ciliates. Ciliates. So, imagine this is the parasite and it has small cilia around it. What do they look like? They look like hair. Hair in Hindi is called bal. So, we can remember from bal the organism, only one organism of importance to humans, Balantidium coli. Balantidium coli. Okay. Now, the another group is Sporozoa. Sporozoa, they are the spore forming ones. Okay. They belong to the phylum Epicomplexa. Epicomplexa. These epicomplexan parasites, I want you to focus on two words here. Okay. Two terms here. Epi and complexa. So, they have an apical complex. All of them have an apical complex, a complex at the tip of the parasite which helps in invading the cells. And they have a complex life cycle. They have a complex life cycle. So, what's the thing about sporozoa? In sporozoa, there is change in generations in between hosts. Okay, so what do these parasites do? They move from one host to another, and when they move, there is a change in generation. It can go from trophozoite to cystosome to microgamy to zygote. All these stages and generations will keep changing in between hosts. So they have an apical complex and they have a complex life cycle. That is the phylum Epicomplexa, which have the sporozoa or coccidia in them. Okay. Now, important examples of sporozoa are your toxoplasma and plasmodium, malaria causing organisms. Okay, this much you can remember now. Classification: protozoa unicellular, helminths multicellular. Amongst the protozoa, depending on the organ of locomotion, they can be pseudopodia amoebae, flagella flagellate, cilia ciliate, sporozoa, epicomplexa. There is also another class called as microsporidia, but that is controversial because some call it a part of fungi, some call it a part of parasites. Amongst amoeba, please remember entamoeba histolytica, free-living amoeba. Amongst flagellates, please remember intestinal flagellates, T. vaginalis, Leishmania, Trypanosoma, which are hemoflagellates. Amongst the ciliates, just remember one example: cilia, hair, ball, and tedium, coli. And amongst sporozoa, please remember the epicomplexan parasites such as toxoplasma and plasmodium. Okay. Now let's look at helminths. Our helminths were multicellular parasites, right? Multicellular parasites. Now they can be divided into two broad classes: platyhelminthes and nemathelminthes. So helminths is the Greek word worm. So all the typical worms which we can imagine, the round ones, the squiggly round worms, they are helminths. So helminths includes all the worms. The protozoa includes the unicellular parasites. Now platyhelminthes, platy means flat. These are the flat worms. And nemathelminthes are the round worms. Okay. Amongst the flat worms, you have two classes. Okay. One is cestodes, trematodes, and the nemathelminthes has just one, which is nematodes. Okay, so just broadly, I want you to remember parasitology into four groups: protozoa, cestodes, trematodes, and nematodes. Where cestodes, trematodes, and nematodes are helminths, and protozoa are unicellular, separate. Okay. Now look at these three guys. The cestodes are the tapeworms. The trematodes are the flukes. And the nematodes are the roundworms. Okay. These three images that you see, these are the prototype images. You see this guy, first cestode, this guy. It is a flat worm, it is a tapeworm, and it has segments. You can see it has segments. This is a fluke. This is leaf-like. It does not have segments. And these roundworms, they are a pair. They are two in number. Okay. So these prototype images, just remember that the tapeworm is like a tape, segmented. Flukes are leaf-like, non-segmented. Roundworms come in pair of two. Okay. Now this will help you remember. First, look at the cestodes. The cestode, you can see this tapeworm right here. So you can see that it is tape-like. One thing I can know that this is tape-like. What is the other thing that I can see from here? That this is segmented. Okay. Now let's look closer. This is a diagram. Look at this part. This is the head. Okay. Now I have magnified the head here. This is the head, or the head is called as the scolex. The scolex of the tapeworm, right? Here you can see that there are rostellum. Rostellum is the mouth opening with hooklets. Here you can look closely. The rostellum with the hooklets. Okay. This is the sucker. These are the suckers. Okay. And this is the neck. This is the neck right here. This makes your scolex. Scolex has three parts: rostellum with hooklets, suckers, and a neck. The rest of the body is called as strobila. Strobila. This strobila has proglottids. So each segment is a proglottid. Okay. These proglottids, you see the initial proglottids are small. They are the immature proglottids. Then they get bigger and they become mature proglottids. And then these are the gravid or pregnant proglottids. So what do I understand from this simple diagram? I want you to number. It is tape-like and segmented, number 1, right? It has rostellum with hooklets, number 2, right? It has, now, if it is gravid, then I can imagine number 3, that it is monoecious. Monoecious, that is, the sexes are not separate. It is a hermaphrodite. Hermaphrodite, right? Number 4, what can I imagine? It is flat, it is tape-like. So there is no body cavity. And number 5, I don't see no alimentary canal. There is simply a mouth, and then there is no esophagus and cecum and all. So there is no alimentary canal. So basically 3 classes: cestodes, trematodes, nematodes. You have to remember 3 into 2, 6 differences. So out of the 6 differences, we can sum up the 5 right here. Tape-like and segmented body, rostellum with hooklets, sexes are not separate, body cavity is absent, and alimentary canal is also absent. Simple. Let's move on to trematode now. This is my trematode right here. So this is a fluke. You can see this is leaf-like. It looks like a leaf. I see no segments. Number 1, this is unsegmented and leaf-like. Okay, what are my other points? Now let's look at this prototype diagram. What do I see here? I see an oral sucker. I don't see no hooklets. There are no hooklets. Okay. I see a pharynx, an esophagus, and a cecum. So I can know number 2, that there is an alimentary canal. Okay. But what do I not see? There is no anus. So this alimentary canal is incomplete. So it is an unsegmented, leaf-like, incomplete alimentary canal. What is my second point? I don't see a body cavity. This is also flat, fluke, leaf-like. So body cavity is absent. Okay. Now what do I see here? This right here. This is the ovary. What are these two sac-like structures? They are testes. So I see both male and female organs of reproduction here. So I know that this is number 4. This is also hermaphrodite. This is also monoecious. Okay. 4 points. Which was my 5th point? The oral suckers and absence of hooklets. Only suckers are present, hooklets are absent. Again, 5 points are covered. Unsegmented, flat, so no body cavity, alimentary canal but incomplete, oral suckers are present but hooklets are absent, and they are monoecious as well, right? Sixth point we will see later. Now, let's move to nematodes. This is my nematode. What do I see? Cylindrical. This is cylindrical. Round worm. So what is my first point then? It is cylindrical and round. So it is also unsegmented, cylindrical and round. What can I guess from this? If it is round and cylindrical, it is going to have a body cavity. So the body cavity is present. What about my alimentary canal? Let's look here. This is the buccal cavity. Okay. There is no suckers, no hooklets. There is a proper mouth, buccal cavity. Some even have, teeth plates. Some also have cutting plates or teeth-like structures. I can see a pharynx, I can see a esophagus, and I can see a cecum also. So I say, and here, what is this? This is the anal pore. So anus is present. So this has a complete alimentary canal. Point 1, unsegmented. Point 2, body cavity is present. Point 3, alimentary canal is present. And point number 4, there is a buccal cavity, no suckers and hooklets. What is point number 5? I told you to remember that there is a pair of nematodes always. There are one, there are two. There are two of them. So one is the male, one is the female. The bigger one, longer one is always the female. You can see the copulatory bursa, you can see the vulva, you can see the uterus, you can see the ovaries, you can see the testes. Okay. So they are number 5. They are dioecious. Sexes are separate. So you can remember the 5 points of cestodes, trematodes and nematodes. You will talk about the mouth, the body cavity, segmentation and shape, alimentary canal, sex is separate. Okay. So let's see this table. I just want you to number this table. 1, 2, 3. Cestodes, trematodes, nematodes. How many differences? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. 6 differences. Shape we have seen, tape-like segmented, leaf-like unsegmented, elongated, cylindrical. Okay. Suckers and hooks. Suckers, no hooks. And well-developed buccal capsule with teeth. Alimentary canal absent, present or absent, and complete with anus. Body cavity absent, absent, present. Sexes are not separate, monoecious, not separate, monoecious, and separate or dioecious. And then we have the life cycle. It requires 2 hosts, requires 3 hosts, requires 1 host. Now, before we get confused by this, let's look right here. So, life cycle. Before I go into the life cycle, I want you to remember something. I'll just write the numbers 2, 3 and 1 here. Let's see first. Easy to remember the life cycle. You have the parasites. Okay, you have the parasites. I told you to remember the parasites broadly in 4. Protozoa, cestodes, trematodes and nematodes. Yeah. I will write here intermediate host and total number of hosts. Okay. I will write this much. Now, I can just do the counting. 1, 2, 3 and this is also 1, not 4, right? So the total number of hosts for protozoa is 1. So 1 will always be a definitive host. Okay, 1 will always be a definitive host. So there are 0 intermediate hosts. If the total number of hosts is 2, so that means there is just one intermediate host and one definitive host. If total hosts are 3, then there is 2 intermediate hosts and 1 definitive hosts. And for nematodes, total host is 1, so there is no intermediate host. So you can simply remember that, look at this one. Cestode, trematode, protozoa, cestode, trematode, nematode. Cestode comes at number 2, so the total hosts are 2. Trematode comes at number 3, so the total hosts are 3. But please remember, does not apply to nematodes. Nematodes are round worms. They are big worms. They are evolved worms. They cannot keep going into so many organisms. They just simply infect one organism and they move ahead in life. Okay. So, but to remember, to not get confused between cestodes and trematodes, how many hosts are there in which, just remember the rule. Cestode has total 2 hosts, trematode has total 3 hosts, out of which one will always be a definitive host. So cestodes have 1 intermediate host, trematodes have 2 intermediate hosts. Trematodes come after cestodes in classification, so they will always have more number of intermediate hosts. Okay, just a way to remember this thing. Now, when I have seen this whole, I know that protozoa have one host. All protozoa have one host except, now let's look at all the exceptions. Except, I have a mnemonic. Best plan C. What is this best plan C? This best plan C is the group of organisms in which man is the intermediate host. Now, so in all parasitic diseases, man is the definitive host except best plan C. In these diseases, man is the intermediate host. Now, if I'm saying it is the intermediate host, that means an intermediate host is there. So, the rule that all protozoa have only one host, that rule cannot apply here. Now, out of these, B, S, T and plan, these are the protozoa. What is B? B is Babesia. What is S? S is Sarcocystis. What is T? Toxoplasma. What is plan? Plan Plasmodium or malaria. Okay, these are the protozoa which have man as the intermediate host. So these are the exceptions to protozoa which have an intermediate host. All other protozoa do not have an intermediate host. They have only one host. Okay. Now, cestodes. Cestodes have 2 hosts in total, except, again, except, you see the number 2? 2. What are the exceptions? 2. There are 2 exceptions. Okay. Easy to remember the name. One says no, no. No, no in Hindi is Nana. No, no, Nana. I don't need an intermediate host. So there is no intermediate host. So there is no intermediate host. So the total hosts are 1 host. Only 1 host is there for H, Nana. No. And I said 2. 2 means die. 2 means die. Die, what's the name with die? Diphyllobothrium. Diphyllobothrium is another cestode which has two intermediate hosts. So the total hosts become 3. So that is an exception to cestodes which have 2 total hosts or 1 intermediate host. Exceptions: Nana, no intermediate host, and Diphyllobothrium, 2 intermediate hosts. That means total hosts are 3. Easy to remember. Trematodes have only one exception, and this guy is schistosomes. Schistosomes. Now these schistosomes have lots of exceptions. Just remember, trematodes, there is one outlier. There is one black sheep in the trematodes, and that is schistosomes. All of the trematodes follow the rule, but schistosomes don't. What is the exception? They have only one intermediate host. So total hosts are 2. Okay. And amongst the nematodes, All have only one host except the filarial worms. Except the filarial worms. Okay, so the nematodes have except filarial worms. So you can remember all protozoa have one host, no intermediate host except best plant C. All cestodes have total two hosts, that is one intermediate host except Nana and Diphyllobothrium. All trematodes have three hosts, that is two intermediate hosts except Schistosomes. All nematodes have only one host, no intermediate host. Exception is filarial worms. Okay. Now let's look at this guy, Schistosomes. He has many exceptions. Easy way to remember all the exceptions. Just look at all the S's in its name. This guy has so many S's in its name. Let's look at the first S. This S is followed by a C. What does this stand for? S for skin. C for Cercaria. These are the exceptions. Now, this is a little off topic, but I am just throwing this mnemonic right here so that when we read schistosomes, it is easier for you to recall. So, it penetrates the skin and Cercaria larva is the infective form. Let's look at the other S. What does this S say? This S says spine. So the eggs of schistosomes have spines. So they are non-operculated eggs. All eggs of trematodes are operculated eggs, eggs with a lid. Only schistosomes have eggs with a spine. Let's look at the other S. This S is followed by an O. This says snail only. Snail only. What does this mean? That the intermediate host is only snail. So there is just one intermediate host. Schistosome says, I only need a snail in my life and a human being. So snail and man, schistosome. End of story. So snail only. And then the last S, what does it say? It says that the sexes are separate. What had we seen? Trematodes and cestodes, monoecious, sexes are not separate except schistosomes. So if we go up here, I said it is monoecious trematodes. I would like to say except schistosomes. Okay. So we have seen the classification of cestodes, trematodes, nematodes, the 6 points of differences, the differences in the life cycles, and one mnemonic of schistosome. So now let's quickly see, we have understood the complex things. Let's just see, life cycle can be simple or direct, where there is only a definitive host and there is no intermediate host. Life cycle can be complex, where more than one host is needed, so there is a definitive host plus an intermediate host. What is a definitive host, by the way? A definitive host is one in which the sexual cycles of multiplication take place. What is an intermediate host? A host where the asexual cycles of multiplication, the asexual multiplication takes place. That is the only difference. Definitive host has sexual stages, intermediate host has asexual stages, right? And another important thing is that the intermediate host is a host which is essential for the life cycle. Essential for the life cycle. That means that if the intermediate host is not there, the life cycle will not get completed. So this intermediate host is not an option. The organism has to go inside the intermediate host in order to complete the life cycle. Okay. Now, these life cycles, let's look at other mnemonics. Which are the organisms which have a simple or a direct life cycle? Which are the organisms which have a complex life cycle? And if they have a complex life cycle, how many hosts? We have already read it. So, very easy. We just saw the complex life cycles. We just saw. Complex life cycle is of cestodes and trematodes, right? Because all protozoa and all nematodes have only one host, they have no intermediate host, they have a direct life cycle with the exceptions. All cestodes, all trematodes have a complex life cycle with one or two intermediate hosts. Exceptions we have seen H. nana, Diphyllobothrium and Schistosome. Let's look at the simple or the direct life cycle. Okay, which are the organisms which have a simple life cycle? Easy to remember. I will say all protozoa have a simple life cycle except we just went through it. Best plan. Except best plan C or best plan, right? Then to remember amongst the cestodes and nematodes which have a direct life cycle. I want you to meet one guy. This guy is my Nana. He's my Nana. Look at my Nana. My Nana is a simple pirate. Simple pirate. P for pirate, P for protozoa. All protozoa except best plan C. Simple life cycle. My Nana, you see, is a pirate. Now, what all is he holding? By the way, let's look. What are my Nana's characteristics? So, one thing I will write here is number one, he's my Nana. Okay? He's quite strong, right? He's quite strong. He seems to have a hook. Oh, he also has a scar. What else? He's holding a whip, isn't it? He's holding a whip. And with whip, I can also remember a pin. Simple? Let's fill in the blanks. Nana. H. Nana. Strongyloides. Hookworm. Ascar. Ascaris. Whipworm. And pinworm. So these are the guys which have a simple or a direct life cycle. H. nana, Strongyloides, hookworm, Ascaris, whipworm, and pinworm. Okay. Hookworm is, let's revise right here. Hookworms are Ankylostoma and Nicator americanus. Ascaris is Ascaris. Whipworm is Trichuris. And pinworm is Enterobius vermicularis. Okay. If you don't want to remember the image of my Nana, you can just remember one hashtag. Whatever helps you remember. Hashtag WhipNana. Hashtag WhipNana. Hash. If I write down the word hash, H-A-S-H. Hash whip. Whip say I can remember pin. So I can again fill in the blanks. H. nana. Ascaris. Strongyloides. Hookworm. Whipworm. And pinworm. Whatever helps you remember, you can choose the mnemonic. Okay. So this is simple or direct life cycle. How to not get confused? Nana is a simple pirate. Right? Now, other hosts which we can see. Reservoir host. What is a reservoir host? That host simply harbors and transmits the parasite. Simply harbors it, transmits it. No developmental stages are going on. Simply the parasite is sitting inside the body and waiting for its turn to go and infect the correct host. What is a paratenic host? The parasite lives but cannot develop. So there is a developmental arrest in a paratenic host. How is it different from an intermediate? It is not essential for the life cycle. Even if the parasite does not hit a paratenic host, life cycle will still go on. Okay. It can also act as a transport or a carrier. Simply within arrested development, the parasite is sitting waiting for the right turn. Another word which I want you to know is the amplifier host. So in a reservoir host, nothing is happening. Parasite is just sitting. In an amplifier host, the exponential multiplication is taking place. The parasite is dividing very, very fast, and that host is highly infectious. Okay. Now, we have seen the different types of parasites. We have seen the different types of hosts. We have seen the different types of life cycles. We have seen a lot of mnemonics Let's not forget my Nana. Now let's just look at some modes of transmission through which we can contract parasitic diseases. So the lecture is almost over. There's just two more important concepts and then the lecture is over. So very common mode of transport, feco-oral. Feco-oral, we all know how we get parasitic infections through feco-oral route, right? Now whenever I say the word feco-oral, I want you to remember auto-infection. What is auto-infection? Automatic infection. That is, now the infection is not happening through an external source. See, you are a healthy person, you get infected once. Now you're infected and you're getting a disease. Now again you're infected through that infective cycle itself. You have not gone and eaten another set of contaminated food and water to get infected again. Once you ate some contaminated food and water, you got infected. Now with that episode itself, you're getting infected again and again and again in an automatic fashion. Now this auto infection, the sources can be external source of auto infection and it can be internal source of auto infection. Now don't be fooled, this external source is still the same body only. What is this external source? The fingers, perianal itching and all. The patient itches, does not clean beneath the fingers and nails, and eats again, auto infection. Again and again, collecting the parasite and eggs from their own perianal area and feeding themselves. Internal is reverse peristalsis. While the organism is inside the small and large intestine, because of reverse peristalsis and reflux, it is coming back to the pharynx and the esophagus and getting ingested again. Okay, that is reverse peristalsis. Whenever I say auto infection, I want you to remember one mnemonic: chest. CHEST, chest. So these chest are the set of organisms which cause auto infection. C for Cryptosporidium species, or parvum rather, Cryptosporidium parvum. H nana is everywhere. Enterobius vermicularis. What was the other name? Pinworm. Strongyloides stercoralis and Tinea solium, which is your tapeworm. Okay. Strongyloides, Enterobius, H. nana, Cryptosporidium, Tinea solium. Chest. Remember, auto infection. Now, another mode of transmission is sexual. I just want you to remember one guy, T. vaginalis. Okay. Blood transfusion. Mostly all the sporozoans, they cause blood transfusion like Plasmodium and Toxoplasma. Skin penetration, vector or bite of vector or rubbing the vector on the skin, including the mites, lice, and all of those are vector or bite penetration. Now, I want you to now remember the vertical transmission. Vertical is congenital, mother to child transmission. There are two mnemonics, either it is a toxic male trip or TMT, whatever helps you remember. Okay, toxic male trip. Look at toxic. CO. Make the C into an O. Toxoplasma. Toxic toxoplasma. Male. Malaria. Malaria. Trip. Trypanosoma. Toxoplasma, malaria, trypanosoma. Toxic male trip. Vertical transmission of parasitic infections. Okay. So this sums up our lecture. We have seen modes of infection: auto-infection, pneumonic is chest; vertical transmission, pneumonic is TMT, toxic male trip. We have seen simple host, whip my nana or whip nana, hashtag whip nana. You can remember the pirate with a scar, with a hook, with a whip, with a pin. And then we can remember the schistosomes, very many exceptions. Then amongst the complex life cycle, we can see the cestode trematodes have intermediate hosts, total number of hosts 2 and 3, except H. nana, nono, Diphyllobothrium and schistosomes. All protozoa have simple life cycle except best plan C. Then we can look at the 6 differences of cestodes, trematodes, and nematodes, and that sums up our lecture. So I hope with the help of these images and visions, you can remember the complex classification of parasites. Just always think in 4 blanket terms: protozoa, cestode, trematode, nematode. That's it. Thank you.